Hey everybody, welcome to episode 14 of Hacker Practice, the podcast where I practice the art of conversation with hackers. Today's guest is a growth hacker and an old friend of mine from my wearable technology days. When I met him, he was working in finance at BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, with more than $5 trillion with a T dollars under management. At the time, my teeny tiny little startup poached him to work on our marketing, and he ended up helping us raise more than $250,000 in an epic crowdfunding campaign that exceeded its goal by 500%. Since then, he's moved on to working at the coolest deal site on the web, App Sumo, the company that promotes great products to help you kick ass at work. Our guest today is my good friend, Chris Schelzi. In our conversation, Chris and I talk about coffee, books, fitness, ideas for health technology startups that could be worth billions of dollars, and Chris's work at App Sumo. I'm really glad to welcome Chris to the podcast, and I hope you enjoy episode 14 of Hacker Practice with Chris Schelzi. Hey Chris, how are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty darn good, Justice. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Can you tell me what it's like in Austin, Texas right now?
Oh man, it's actually a little cooler than it was today. I thought it was going to be hotter. This past week has been like mid 80s, sunny. It's been beautiful out. And today it's going to get up to about 65, so it'll still be nice. Sun's out shining. I'm sitting in my room on a new chair I got last weekend and brewed up some delicious coffee. So I've always been into coffee, but my newest thing recently, I've been kind of diving a little deeper into it. So I've been playing around with a couple different methods. I used to use the AeroPress, and then I got a French press last week.
Oh.
Really didn't like it.
You don't like the French press?
No, and so I've been doing a lot of, let's say, mediocre amount of research into the different brewing methods. And from what I've seen, there's like a scale from you put French press on one end, and then you know what a Chemex is? It's like that glass one that has the bamboo handle.
We used to get Chemex at the Wired Puppy in Boston, remember?
That's right. Yeah. So it's like French press is on one end of the spectrum, Chemex is on the other end, and then in the middle are things like a V60 pour over, which is kind of where you have like that cone that sits on top of the cup and you put a paper filter in it. And then what is represented on those ends of the spectrum is the French press is like a full immersion. And so you're putting the ground coffee in, it's sitting directly in the water, and you're letting it sit for like, say, 4 minutes, and then you press it out. And then the Chemex uses a heavy paper filter where it's like a filtering process where the water is just running through the bean. So it's the actual ground is in the coffee for a lot less time. And then the paper filter filters out like all of the oils and things like that so they don't get into it. So with the Chemex, you get a very clean cup that has almost, I don't even really know what this means, but they say like almost no body. And then it's the flavors, like the distinct tasting notes are and it sounds very pretentious talking about this. And I only understand half of it, but I'm just going to go with it. The flavors are separated out, so you kind of taste them more individually, versus with the French press, which I really noticed is it's more of like a muddled flavor where everything is kind of blended together, and it's a very like full body, like it's a heavy feel in your mouth.
That.
But you don't get yeah, I was not a fan. I played around with like a couple different ways to make it. Did it for about a week, and I'm like, I really don't like this. Like it tastes a lot like more clouded than say like an AeroPress, and then the Chemex is on like the far end. So then I got a Chemex a couple days ago. So I've made 4 or 5 different runs of it, and I think it's so good. And I didn't.
So the magic of the Chemex is in the filter, not in the decanter.
Like design. Yeah, and then I mean the actual like glass. I don't know if it's a carafe or a decanter. It has like a cool little like spout on it. It won some innovation award, which is pretty cool. But it's beautiful. The other thing with the French press is you don't want to keep the bean like you do it for say 4 minutes. You let them sit, and then you actually press it. But what a lot of people do is they'll press it and then just leave the coffee in there. And you're not supposed to do that because then it just overly extracts the bean. It's still sitting in the water. Like the surface of those beans is still touching the water. So you're continuing to extract from the beans. And then you get like really bitter taste and things like that.
See, I love that because in my mind, that's the living coffee. When I think of people drinking coffee in the Wild West, they were brewing it in a pot over the fire with the beans just in the pot and maybe crushed with the butt of their revolver and
butt of their revolver. Yeah. I totally understand that, and that was kind of why I wanted the French press, because I like that idea of the simplicity of it. But then it's one of those things where I would just need to ask myself, like, okay, am I just like romanticizing the idea of coffee, or do I want something that I actually enjoy drinking? And so I started.
So wait, what do you drink it black, or how are you drinking?
Yeah,
it?
I almost always drink my coffee black, unless I'm like mixing it with like MCT oil or butter or
heavy cream.
Like, no, I really don't have much dairy at all. But
okay. So here's the ultimate coffee hedonistic experience for me. Not for health, but just for the greatest tasting coffee experience I think I can imagine is French press coffee, good quality coffee with heavy cream is magical. I mean, so when I was waking up last year, the first quarter of last year, I did an experiment where I woke up around 4 o'clock in the morning every day and would just program. And my routine was so beautiful because I would wake up, I'd go make this ridiculous French press coffee with the heavy cream. I would Snapchat it every day to hold myself accountable because you can get the little timestamp in there. And people loved the Snapchats of the French press because it is a beautiful kind of coffee making experience. And then I was really weird because I would program in the darkness of the morning it was January, it was the first quarter of last year, so it was dark in the morning, and I would be playing like Tchaikovsky really loud in my room while programming in the dark.
This is real pretentious.
Yeah, it was super duper pretentious, but I mean Tchaikovsky.
But it's fun.
Favorite.
It can be fun to do that.
I think personal levels of pretension bring me so much satisfaction.
If you recognize it for what it is. But so one thing I've been thinking a lot about, because actually in the past like 2 weeks, I've spent a good amount of money on like coffee equipment, and a good amount of it I've also returned. And I think that's something that I've been thinking.
Okay, so tell me what
you
spent money on, and tell me what you've returned and why.
Let me pull up. I have a spreadsheet going. So I wanted to track how much money, because I'm like, this is. So to start it all off,
Chris Schelzi has a coffee equipment spreadsheet. I hope you're going to write a blog post about that.
Oh, man. Well, so I've been thinking a lot about, like, addictions. And I guess this would also include, like, of the narcotic variety. But more so just the things in your life that like, you spend money on that you don't need, that are unnecessary. And people will think of them as simple vices. So, like, for me, it's coffee. And it's, like, or books. I was actually reading a blog post, and it was talking about how it's like, oh yeah, like the guy was saying, he's like, yeah, I have like tens of thousands of books, and I have my own personal staff who manage them for me, and they replace the books when I'm done with that, or they replace the books like when they get damaged. They're always getting new ones. They keep them perfectly organized for me, and it's completely free. It's called a library. And I was just like, you know what? That's a really interesting point. And I think you and I were already talking about this at one point. But it just made me reflect on, like, I love having a library. I love having my books. I see them as, like, an investment. I don't see it as just, like, an expense. And I see it as, if you're going to spend money on something, spending money on books, something that, like, the smartest people throughout history have always had, like, a collection of and spent time with. Like, that's a pretty good vice to have.
Yes.
And sure, I agree with that. But on the other hand, it's like you also need to see it for what it is and taken to the extreme. It's like you just spend money on all these books that you're never going to have time to read, and they just kind of make you feel like it's okay because it's books. And I've been applying that same thing to coffee recently.
And it can be, and with books specifically, it can totally be a vice. And at least for myself personally, I recognize when it's becoming a vice when like I'll wake up and my routine is to write for, do morning pages and then read right now. And usually I'll read one book, but the other day I was kind of taking not a day off, but I was taking a day without meetings. And so I didn't have anything that made me go away from the book reading. And so instead of just reading the one book and then putting a bookmarker in and going and doing real work, I read the one book and then I pulled out another book and I started speed reading that book, and it became, and I did it with three books in a row. Obviously not reading the whole thing, but just reading a certain amount of it. And I realized it was just intellectual, running on a treadmill. Maybe I was getting something out of it.
Call it for what it is. It's just intellectual masturbation. You're just like, look how smart I am. Look at me stroking my brain, sitting here with my cup of coffee and my books, just reading the day away.
But I like to think you do get something out of it.
Yeah, but it's like it's Aristotle's golden mean, right? There's like the triangle, and there's vice on one end, virtue on the other, and then the golden mean sits somewhere above and in the middle. So it's like, if you're sure coffee's good, it has like, you can kind of be like, oh, it has all these health benefits, and I'm having the highest quality. Or like books, like this is, like I'm reading Plutarch and I'm reading about the history of the world and all this stuff. And
have you read Plutarch lately?
I was
Is that
rereading.
Why you brought him up?
It was probably about a month ago. I was rereading How to Use One's Enemies. I believe that's what it's called, the essay, which I just think is such a fascinating read. But
okay, have you ever read the Histories by Herodotus?
No, but it's on the list, and it's one of those things that I have these like big books that I want to read and dive into, and I always put off reading them. And then when I finally read them, I'm always mad that it took me. And one of them right now that I actually am reading is the Autobiography of Malcolm X that I've been reading.
Oh my gosh, that book is so good.
I've had it on my shelf for probably over a year, and I've just been putting it off, and now I'm reading it, and I'm like, I cannot believe how good this is, and I wish I had read this book when I was like 19. I think it's like the...
I mean, it's the most important biography of that generation.
It's the nonfiction black Catcher in the Rye, and it's so good. It's like he's coming from, I think he was born in Michigan, and then he comes to, I didn't know he was in Boston, and he was sent to prison in Concord, which is where I'm from.
Oh yeah,
Concord,
that's
Massachusetts.
A very famous
and I was like,
too.
how did I not know that? And all these different things. But he comes to the city, he's like very naive, he kind of gets introduced to like these pimps and hustlers and prostitutes and learns about the world, and it's like I found it very similar. I mean, I'm about halfway through it, but very similar to Catcher in the Rye with Holden Caulfield, and he's at like boarding school, and then he sneaks away for the weekend. He's very naive and goes to the city and like orders a prostitute, but then ends up not sleeping with her. But then the pimp shows up. I think that's how the story, something like that. But just like one of those coming of age tales, and just learning what it means to be a man, and what is power, and what is masculinity, and how do you get respect, and how do you like treat people around you, or show fear, or treat women,
so
like
wait,
all these
have you
different.
Gotten to the part where he's in prison yet?
Oh yeah, he got out of prison, and now he's going around. He's becoming a minister for Elijah Muhammad.
Right,
and
because he was pretty much illiterate before he went to prison. And this is the most interesting thing in the world to me, is that so many people go to jail and they come out and they haven't changed a bit. But that doesn't have to be dead time, right? That can be time that you're making good use of. And this is really more of a metaphor for just any type of difficult time in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the recidivism rate is like 30% or something. It's just a staggering rate. Recidivism, it's people who go to prison end up going back, like that rate of it. Because I when I was in college, I used to work for this nonprofit called Family Reentry, and so it was to help families who had a member in prison, like typically a father, who was then coming out, and to help the family like get back together to reduce the recidivism rate. Because so many people just come out of prison and there's no real, what's the word I'm looking for? Like rehabilitation in the prison. And so they just come out, keep doing what they were always doing, and they get sent back to prison. So this was to like help break that cycle and stop like family violence and things like that. But the rates of people who get out of prison and go back are staggering. And then you read something like this. I don't know if he was illiterate, because I had thought that beforehand. But then in the book, it seemed like he used to read, but like only when he was much younger, and then stopped reading. And then he got sent to prison, and there was this guy in there who was like an older guy who spent a lot of time in the library. And then as he got introduced to like Islam and Elijah Muhammad, he started like really just crushing books. And he's like, if I wasn't reading in my cell, I was reading in the library, and they would turn the lights out at night at like 10 o'clock, and the guards would be on a 1-hour rotation. And as soon as they passed him, he would stick his like book out of the jail cell through the bars and like read in the light that was in the hallways. He would read for 58 minutes until the guards came back for their next round. He would do that till about 3 o'clock in the morning. By the time he got out of prison, he got an astigmatism in his eye from like reading in such low light that then he had to start wearing glasses. But
so what's your excuse for not reading?
Hey man, I was reading that right before this call.
Yeah. No, not you. The listener. Right. But we were talking about coffee. We were talking about your spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I don't want to let that get away.
Okay. Yeah. I think we could have an entire 5-hour conversation on coffee and books. But so what was I saying?
I mean, and we have.
Yeah, we have. I guarantee it's been more than that. But so yeah, coffee is something that I like, but also recognizing it as a vice. Because it's easy to be like, oh, there's all these studies with the health benefits of coffee, and it's the number one source of antioxidants for Americans. And if you're getting high quality beans, it can be great, all this different stuff. But I feel like a lot of that is just like, regardless of whether or not it's true, and I think a lot of it is true, you can use it to just rationalize taking things to an extreme. So recognizing that, I'll try to go like every once in a while, go a week without coffee just to do it, just to like be like, I can live without it. I don't need these things. And even last night, because this was like, I just got the Chemex a couple days ago. And I was just thinking like, man, I can't wait to make my coffee in the morning. I'm like, I was spending too much time just like thinking about it. I'm like, I should be focusing on higher quality things.
You know what though? When you get something new or so I had this experience because I just kind of built out my own home cabin on the farm type of deal. And I thought it might be a little bit indulgent, but there were the first week or so, every time I'd walk in there, I would just sit down and look around and be like, this is me. This is something I did. And I think that you should kind of suck enjoyment out of the things that you get enjoyment out of, because, you know, they are fleeting, right? You know that moment of getting the new Chemex is going to go away, right? And the newness of it's going to go away. So you might as well enjoy it while it's new.
Oh man, I have so many thoughts about this.
Wait, tell me what's on your spreadsheet.
Okay. Well, so another point I was making that I got off tangent on is recognizing that you can return things. Like, I think a lot of people buy stuff and then get upset, or like not upset, but they get it and then they're like, I don't really like this anymore, and they keep it. Or they want to get something and they're not sure they're going to like it. But like, I got the French press. I actually got a small French press. I didn't like it. I returned it. I got a bigger one. Didn't like it. I returned it. And then I got a bigger Chemex. I didn't like that. I returned it. And now I have the smaller Chemex that's like the 3-cup size. And I like that because it's like a small personal size. I don't want to drink like too much coffee. And if you get a bigger one, then it's just going to be like, oh, well, I need to fill it up. And then you're drinking more. So I think taking advantage of that. So it kind of seems like I got more stuff than I actually did because I returned the majority of it. But like one thing I really wanted to get was this thing called the Zen Roaster, which is it's something that they actually use to make tea leaves in Japan. It's kind of like a ceramic little pot that you put the tea leaves in, you hold them over like an open flame, and you can kind of roast your beans like that or roast your tea leaves. But instead I got like a popcorn popper. So I'm going to start roasting actually, like I bought green coffee beans. Oh,
you decided against the Zen Roaster. You were so excited about it. I'm surprised.
I was, but I didn't know if it was going to be I was reading some reviews and it didn't sound great. And I figured I would start at like the lower level and then have something to graduate to. I think if you go like all the way to the top and then it's just like, you're like, oh, well now I need to get a $2,000 coffee machine because I already got this one. So got a $20 popcorn popper, which people say is like a pretty good way to get like into roasting coffee. And then I went to sweetmarias.com and bought some green coffee beans. Because it's ridiculous how much cheaper it is to get like green coffee beans, and then you can like freshly roast your own coffee. So there's like the whole ritual and the experience to it that I really enjoy in the morning of just like spending 15 minutes making a cup of coffee, as opposed to just like throwing in the Keurig and flipping the button and having it in 30 seconds. It's like the moving meditation. And now with the Chemex, you have to fold the filter. It comes in like this half moon dome, and you have to like fold it in half, and then fold up this little kind of tab at the end, and then fold it back over. So you're doing like this little origami in the morning, and you're focusing. There's just something I really enjoy about that experience. And so it's like, I know it's completely indulgent and unnecessary, but I like it as a way to start the day. So I got the popcorn popper. I bought some like 4 pounds of green beans. I got a glass carafe that I'm actually going to return because I was going to get that with the French press. And then I got the Chemex, and then I even built myself a coffee table, which I'm actually pretty darn happy with.
Wait, so like a literal coffee table for your living room, or is it like
it's
a specialized
actually, I guess it would
coffee
be
table?
Technically called a side table.
And how does it work? Like, how does this fit into your coffee making routine? And also, I want you to point out
ties
specifically.
into so many things. Okay,
go ahead.
So last weekend, I've been in my my new house. I guess it's not new anymore. I moved in September, and in my room I just have like a desk and a bed, and I don't really sit at my desk too much because I made myself a swing chair that I like drilled into the ceiling, so it's a swing, and it was pretty cool when I first did it. But then I realized it's not super comfortable to sit in for like hours and hours so I would end up doing work like either on the couch in the living room or at the kitchen table. And I didn't really want to spend time in my room. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. So last weekend I went and I got like a nice chair with an ottoman, and then I wanted to have a side table because I put my chair next to my bookshelf. And then I would be like putting cups on my bookshelf, and I don't like adulterating my bookshelf. I like to keep that just for the books. And so I wanted like a side table that I could put stuff on, but I've been really into like building things with my hands for like the past year or so. So like in my room, I built all the shelves that I put my clothes on. I built like the swing chair. I built us a coffee table that's downstairs. And so I wanted to build a side table, that would be big enough to put like my speaker on, like my mini Bose speaker, and then be able to put a couple books on, have a shelf where I can put my laptop and my phone and like charge that stuff, and then have a space for my coffee to sit on top. And then I got like a clip-on lamp that clips onto the chair. And so the purpose was just to have a setup that I really enjoy being in, because at my last apartment I was in, I just didn't really like being there, and I didn't really take the time to set it up and to have a space for my own stuff that like when I walked in, I like felt really good and peaceful in it. And so now like I spent a lot of last weekend just like building and setting up like this one little corner in my room. And now I love being in here. I love sitting down. Like I got a blanket for the back of my chair and a
Tell me about
pillow.
the lighting.
The lighting I just went to Target and got a clip-on lamp for like $7.
I mean more like the natural
everything.
Like, do your windows face south?
Yeah, I have 2 windows. God, what direction are they facing in? I think that is east, which means no, the windows are facing north. But I still get a good amount of sunlight that comes in, and there's like trees outside my window. So right now I'm sitting in like the corner of my room with my bookshelves to the right of me, and then the windows to the left of me, and I'm kind of at an angle. So I'm like, my left eyes are kind of left eyes, as if I have 2 left eyes, are looking out. A squirrel's running up a tree right now. So it's pretty awesome. I really enjoy my set. And then I have all my camping stuff against like one wall that I built shelves for, and I have my I think it's a 20-inch Wetterling axe that I have kind of like mounted, almost like someone would mount like a deer head, like mounted up on the wall.
I need a 20-inch axe. Would you recommend what is it, Wetterlings?
Yeah, Wetterlings. No, I would not recommend it if you're chopping wood. It's like a huntsman's axe. So it's if you were going out into like the backwoods and you were gonna trap like go camping with it.
So the thing is, I need something because I've got a regular. I guess it's probably a 3-foot axe that I use for chopping wood, and it's a fine axe. And then I need something smaller for when I get the kind of 2 to 3 inch logs that just need to be cracked in half. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In that case, then I would recommend that. I need to find out how big it is. I forget, but I think it is 20 inches. Because I've tried chopping large amounts of wood with this, and I almost cut my ankle off. You need a bigger one with a longer handle so that if you miss, it strikes the ground. It doesn't swing past. It's great if I'm going like camping and I need to chop stuff up that's bigger than then like I could just kind of like baton with my knife. But so it's great for that type of stuff, or for if you have wood that's already chopped and then you want to get it into more like fine pieces, then it's good. But for like big, heavy duty, long chores, it's not the appropriate thing. And every tool has its place.
I feel like we've never gone camping. We should go camping together.
Let's do it. Yeah, I haven't gone camping in a while, and it's frustrating because I love doing it, and I just haven't blocked out the time to do it. There's so many great places.
Is there a place like the top of your list?
I was going to go to Joshua Tree when I was in LA a couple weeks ago with my friends, and then it just kind of fell through. So I would love to go to Joshua Tree, and but no, yeah, Big Bend is a place that I want to go to.
Have you ever done the Appalachians?
No. I mean, I've camped along places, but no, not. I haven't done done a section of the Appalachian Trail.
There's a good place called Skyline Drive where it's just this majestic ride along Appalachian mountains with camping grounds all around.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah. The Blue Ridge Mountains.
Oh yes,
that'd be good.
That's where I feel like Daniel Boone spent a lot of time there.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about coffee, a lot about books. We had an agenda that we've completely digressed from, but I think it's really important that we get into some of these things, because you and I are men of, I think, for lack of a better word, obsession.
I think that's about as good of a word as there is.
Right. And one of the things that we're definitely both obsessed with, you to an even greater degree than me, is health, right? So I get to a point with health where I kind of have something, like I'm constantly just trying to iterate on the system that I have to get, something that works better without really thinking too deeply about all of the underlying mechanics. And you are, I don't know what you're doing, like if you went to college for this or what, but you know about the names of chemicals and hormones and molecules, and so you just have a much more scientific view of it, while mine is much more intuitive and kind of based on, I read a lot and I experiment a lot personally, but I don't really understand the underlying mechanics. So I did want to get into, also, to be fair, I'm in good shape and you're in like great shape. You are shredded, dude. Like when we were on a cruise last year and this guy was walking around and he just put everybody to shame. It's like, you're top 1% easily.
You flatter me, Justus.
I don't flatter you. If I was flattery would be a lie. This is the truth. So I wanted to start with diet. Okay? Because I'm in a pretty happy place with my diet. I don't have any rules really, but I'm doing an intuitive eating kind of thing. And it's really low carb, but I'm not saying no to carbs, right? Like I eat honey sometimes, and I have granola sometimes, things like that. Lots of greens. I'm curious, we haven't been hanging out personally in the last couple months because we've been, you're in Austin, I'm in Baltimore. Do you have anything that you think that I would have to try or I need to try?
Ooh. It's hard to say that because it all depends on, I guess, if you set your goals, I could help with that. Right now I'm sitting here sipping some ketones in my water, some beta hydroxybutyrate, which is quite tasteful. And that's what I like to follow up my coffee with, which is probably just too much stuff to be consuming in the morning.
Well, actually, so I took one. So you gave me some advice a few days ago. I said, because I've been drinking bulletproof coffee every morning, my own version. It's just coconut oil and butter, right? I don't use his products or anything. However, the taste, it's good, but it doesn't, I don't like it every single day for months and months and months. So I need to change it up a little bit. So I started adding cinnamon, and then I started adding a little bit of cocoa powder. And now what I do, you said you should add some protein to it. And so what I've been doing is I've been adding vanilla vegan protein, and that has been a huge upgrade. So maybe you've already given me some good advice.
Well, yeah. So again, that's something that it depends on the person's goals. I think protein has kind of become, what's the way to put it? I think most people nowadays, at least who are like at least somewhat paying attention to their health, recognize that like carbs are something that you need to, I don't want to say be cautious because it makes it sound like they're dangerous. And like, I think sugar is dangerous. It's clearly a drug. And, but carbs can be abused. And I think people know that like, if you're trying to lose weight or you're having these different issues, like carbs are something to pay attention to. But I think protein has kind of gone under the radar and seen that it's like perfectly fine, eat as much as you want. And I don't think that is the case. And I think protein is something that still needs to be like limited and shouldn't be eaten unabashedly, because if you have like super high levels of protein, that can become toxic in your body. It's a lot to process, and you don't
really.
But yeah, but at the same time, your body is usually pretty good at regulating protein intake. So typically the levers are carbs and fats, because protein generally falls within like the maybe 30 to 50% range. But like when somebody switches to low carb, I think one of the mistakes they make is not consuming enough fat and consuming a ton of protein. And then if you add on top of that,
problem?
Well, your body just doesn't require as much protein as like a lot of people. Like there's like different bodybuilder factor like equations that'll say you need whatever it is, like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight or things like that. And I think if you pay more attention to consuming the right amount of fats and eating whole foods, then the protein is going to take care of itself. But I think it becomes an issue when people have all of these supplemental proteins and they're drinking like big protein shakes and things like that, because you're having it in a liquid form. It's just like a way to like trick your body and make it a little more difficult to regulate those things, versus if it's bound up with all the fibers and the fats that are found in like whole food forms. And the same thing can happen with fats to a degree. And I guess it depends on if you're trying to go for like ketosis and consume a lot more fats. Like an easy way to do that is to make something like bulletproof coffee, where you can throw like 75 grams of saturated fat in and slurp it down pretty easily with
I'm gonna make
like
some after this.
Yeah, and it can be good. But I think protein is something that people don't pay enough attention to, that like if nothing else, like just monitor it and be like, wow, I'm consuming a ton of protein.
Okay, for example, I have been getting into a pretty bad, maybe this isn't a bad habit, I don't know, but I've been getting into a habit of eating these protein bars that I've got, which are like 30 grams of protein each. And sometimes I'll have like 3 of them in a day. Is that too much?
Again, it depends on what your goals are. So I think if somebody who is working out needs more protein than somebody who is on a computer all day.
Okay, so that is the thing, is that my goal is like, I do not want to work right now. I'm not in a position where it's convenient for me to do really high intensity exercise almost ever. And so I do walk a lot. I get outside a lot and do a lot of manual labor. Like, you know, if you rake a yard, right? Like raking a yard. And I also have the psychological mindset that everything that you do can be turned into exercise if it involves some kind of repetitive, wide range of motion movement. And so I would say I'm low activity. I don't really want to do actual exercise. I'm certainly not going to go to the gym. Best case scenario, you'll get me to run around, you know, a few miles and do some sprints in the middle of that, right? So, and my goals are, you know, I want to stay in good looking shape. Like I want to look good and stay trim. But more importantly, I want to have really good positive energy throughout the day. Like I've noticed that if I drink too much coffee, it's like a negative energy. So I don't know if that helps you narrow it down at all, but I also like to eat stuff. Like what I've realized is I really enjoy like a little something sweet at the end of the day. And so my new thing has been some almonds and granola with honey, and like coconut shavings and nuts and stuff. And you just microwave that and it turns into this awesome oatmeal thing that tastes amazing. But it's, you know, it's obviously carb based, right? But it's the only real carbs I have throughout the day other than greens. So, you know, I've got all these rationalizations and I'm like, oh, I'm in pretty good shape and, you know, my energy's good. But I would love to know if there's a way to take it to the next level, if that's impeding my progress, I can kind of shift it down a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was going to get, and it's all like, because everyone has their own degree of like biochemical individuality, where your body isn't going to respond. It will probably respond similarly, but not exactly the same as mine will. And so that's why like it's important to recognize that. So like I think if I was going to, if someone's like, hey, we're going to put you on the cover of Men's Health, like this is what would I do to prepare for that, to just get in like top, say, physical looking shape? Because I think a lot of that stuff, there are ways to do it dangerously, but at the same time, it's like if you're in decent shape, chances are you're probably eating well, and there's always going to be outliers where like there are like Michael Phelps eats 10,000 calories of pancakes every day or something like that. And
right, also spends
so
8
there's
hours
always
in sub
exactly
70-degree water.
But people just want to eat those 10,000 calories of pancakes and think that they'll get a six pack. So it's kind of like a good rule of thumb. Like if you're in good shape and you feel healthy and you look good, chances are you're probably doing something right. So I think I would eat lowish carb, pretty low carb actually, at least cyclically. So say 6 days out of the week, eat pretty low carb, high fat, moderate protein. Mm-hmm. So that could look like, say, I've actually been making frozen bulletproof coffee in the morning, if you want to call it bulletproof.
Tell me about frozen bulletproof coffee.
I wouldn't even call it bulletproof. I'll call it a cold, fatty coffee drink. So what I do is there's a company in Austin called Chameleon Cold Brew. Is it Chameleon Cold Brew? It's Chameleon Coffee, I think. And they make a cold brew. And it's a concentrate, which I like because then like you mellow it out with all the other ingredients and then it still has that coffee flavor as opposed to using just like a straight up coffee and then it gets way too mellowed out. So I put in, I believe, anywhere from 4 to 5 ounces of the cold brew coffee concentrate. And make sure it like has no sugar in it. A lot of them, I think the one I get is the only one they make that doesn't have any added sugar. So I put 4 to 5 ounces.
People are putting sugar in cold brew now?
Yeah, you look at you're like, oh, look at this one they're selling on the shelf for $5, and it's like 11 grams of sugar in it. It's like, come on. It's frustrating. Yeah. So I'll put 4 to 5 ounces of cold brew, then about 4 ounces of full fat coconut milk, then about a tablespoon of MCT oil, and then a scoop of MCT powder and then I will put like a quarter scoop or less of a vanilla protein powder I have. And I'm basically having that not for the protein, more for just like the little hint of sweetness from the stevia that's in the protein powder. And I have just so little, like it's probably 5 grams of protein, something like that. And I might even exclude that if I was, if this was for like getting the best shape of your life type thing. Because protein in higher amounts, if you're having low carb, can go into gluconeogenesis, which is where your body converts protein and amino acids into glucose. And so then that's a way that your body will like increase your glucose by converting protein. And it's a slow process. It doesn't happen like super quick as soon as you ingest protein, but that can be something to pay attention to.
So it sounds like a big thing that you're trying to kind of convey, but is that I think in general, so I've been talking to my mom about health and nutrition lately. She's lost like 50 pounds or something in the last year or two, you know, which she was never like really overweight, but she's like in pretty good shape, like skinny lady, skinny 55-year-old woman. And so she's lost a lot of weight, and she's kind of on the last, she wants to get down from like, I don't know how much I should tell about my mother, but she's trying to get down from like 128 to like 124, right? So she's kind of on the last leg, the last like 1% of weight, which is the hardest. And part of me, and she's also from this older generation where they were really raised on this low-fat diet idea, and it took me years and years and years of saying low carb, low carb, low carb, low carb to get her on board with a low carb diet, but she's still not on board with a high-fat diet, right? So I'm wondering, do you have any experience with, because there's a certain classification of person who's not convinced by scientific rationale. Is there some argument or some way to maybe push the high-fat diet that would, go well with older generations or kind of anti-science people?
So it makes me think of what I just read in Malcolm X, where he was talking to Elijah Muhammad, and there was a dirty glass on a countertop, and Elijah Muhammad just got a clean glass and put it next to it. And then he says to Malcolm, he goes, "You don't need to." Something like, "You don't need to tell people their glass is dirty. Just show them what a clean glass looks like." And so basically lead by example, right?
Yeah, but when people see me throw like a couple tablespoons of butter into my coffee in the morning, that isn't like, oh, that guy's in such good shape and look how much butter he eats. It's like, that's alarming. You're going to have a heart condition for that category of person, you know?
I mean, so first let me finish my point if I was getting in the best shape, because I think then you can extract stuff from there. So you do that fatty coffee in the morning. Then for lunch, I would have maybe a big salad with a ton of like veggies, but not like starchy veggies. So it would be cucumbers, bell peppers, I would
Leafy
have
greens.
kale, like baby kale, baby spinach, maybe some arugula, because arugula is my favorite, and then drench it in some like good quality salad dressing that doesn't have added sugar, like maybe even just olive oil and vinegar. And then for dinner, having like a fatty steak, something like that. And like probably a big portion for lunch. I think lunch should probably be the biggest meal of the day. And then dinner should be smaller. And I think most people flip it, where dinner is this huge meal and lunch is kind of like this small, just enough energy to keep going to dinner. And I don't think that's right. I think, well, not right in a moral sense, but I think if you're trying to get in great shape or just be healthy, like, fuel yourself in the middle of the day when you have a lot of day left. And then like when you're going to go to bed, you don't need a huge meal to like fuel you sleeping. And then from like a workout standpoint,
that's really interesting, because on the flip side, you do get a lot of advice to kind of, you know, intermittent fasting. Like if you only eat like one meal a day, dinner is like the good one. Plus, if I eat early in the day, I pretty much have to eat all day.
If you eat early in the day, you have to eat all day.
My hunger is more uncontrollable if I have breakfast, for example. And I'm not counting bulletproof coffee, because generally I'll drink bulletproof coffee and then I'll go all day until dinner without eating anything and I'm fine. Or I'll drink bulletproof coffee and then I'll have lunch and then I'll snack until dinner. So, and again, they're healthy snacks, right? They're like protein bars or like an iced coffee here and, you know, some, a salad for lunch, a big salad for lunch. So, you know, I'm just saying that that's kind of in opposition to what you're suggesting. But you think that, hey, you should have a big lunch if you're trying to get in the best shape of your life.
Yeah, and I think this still goes well with intermittent fasting, which is something I would also be doing. So I would be having dinner and finishing up by like 8 o'clock, and then it would be more of like a carb and protein intermittent fasting than just it, and like still including the fats. So stop eating at like 8 o'clock at night, and then maybe have the coffee in the morning around 8 o'clock, and then have lunch around 1 o'clock. So you're still getting like a 16, 17-hour carb and protein fast. And in doing that protein cycling can also, like, not just staying away from the carbs, but having that gap of protein can be really beneficial, because then when you introduce protein, you have like a higher protein utilization rate, and you synthesize protein and use it more efficiently than like by fasting and like by doing a protein fast than just constantly consuming protein. And just to finish this out, from like a workout standpoint, lifting heavy weights twice a week. And so like if you're talking about your mom, you can just get her something that's like some dumbbells or a kettlebell that she can play around with. For like, you don't need to be doing these big intense workouts, but lifting something heavy that's hard and challenging, and it all depends on like what your physical capability is, and doing that to the point where it's like you can feel that stress taking place in your body, and then sprinting maybe once every 7 to 10 days, doing like a Tabata style sprint where you're doing 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and do that 6 to 8 times. And that's something that can like really kick it over the edge. So I think that's something that you should be doing if you're trying to do something like this. But everything else, like, I think people make it way too complicated, and sometimes you have to like beat them over the head with the science to then just come back to the basics of like what's that Michael Pollan quote? It's like, how do you eat healthy? He has this book called Food Rules, and he's the guy that wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma and Cooked and all these other books. But he has like a tiny little pamphlet of a book That's called Food Rules. And basically the big takeaway, and like the quote for that book is, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And it's like, if you follow that, and it doesn't mean only plants, it means mostly plants. Like, you should be having a ton of vegetables. That's another thing I think people will not do when they switch to like a lower carb diet, is cut out, like, think vegetables aren't important and all you're going to be doing is eating like a shit ton of meat all the time. Don't think that's right. I think you should still be having like the majority, if not calories, at least from like sheer volume of space taken up on your plate, should be vegetables, whether it's like salads or things like that.
How much of your eating do you eat? Like, how much do you eat by feeling? Do you just feel like, oh, I need to have a salad. It's about time for a salad, versus, oh, it's about time for a steak.
That's a good question.
Because that's like my way of doing it now, and I'm not in as good shape as you, but I'm in pretty good shape. So I'm trying to, I'm like, for my sake, I'm trying to figure out, okay, for this summer, like, I want to spend basically 1 month getting in great shape for the beach, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to spend the whole 6 months, like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, in April, I want to turn up my game and get in good shape for the beach. Or May, right?
Yeah.
But then for the average person, or especially, I am asking in large part for my mother, because she's getting older now and she's gotten in great shape, but she's trying to do that last mile. And she's also, she's been telling me, she's like, my knees hurt. And I'm like, well, you got to lift weights, Mom. And she's like, well, I can't even do an air squat. I'm like, well, you can't do an air squat until you start lifting more than your body weight, and then those air squats will be easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think if she has knee issues, that's another thing altogether. But she could do like isometric workouts, right? Where she just like gets into a low-ish squat, and this is not medical advice, consult your doctor, but like just getting in a low-ish squat and holding that and doing things like that. Like, I think you have more chance of injury if you're doing repetitive motions all the time. But if you do things like planks, or you do isometric ab holds, or like holding a squat or things like that, then that can help you build strength without the worry of like repeated abuse on your joints. So when I say sprint every 7 to 10 days, do that on grass and do it barefoot. Don't do it on concrete. Like, it's just not great for your knees. Or go in even better, if you're worried about joints, go in a pool and do Tabata sprints in a pool. Sprint all the way. Like, let's see. If you're, because I used to do swim team. So if you're killing it in the pool, you can do a 50 meter, 50 meters in around like 25 to 30 seconds. That's
and
like,
when you
I
say
think it was
sprint,
20.
Do you mean a literal running sprint or swimming?
Both. You can, either way. The whole point is to jack your heart rate up in like lactic acid. So I guess lactic acid is a byproduct, not necessarily what you're shooting for, but you can do it on a Concept 2 rowing machine, something like that. But the whole point is to go as hard as possible for 20 seconds, pause for 10, repeat. And so doing it in a pool, like, that's another way to do it. That's zero impact if you know how to swim. So yeah, like, that is something to pay attention. If you do have joint issues, you don't want to just like fight through it. You're just going to make things worse. But there are ways around it. And I think most excuses people have are just like a reason because like sprinting's not always fun. So it's like, my knees hurt, I'm not going to do anything. It's like, well, then get in the pool.
Okay.
But family is also the hardest to convince to change.
Which maybe we can have another conversation about some other time. I want to get into your ultimate health technology. What is that?
Oh man. Let's pause for a second so I can go to the bathroom though. Then we'll get into it.
Go ahead.
Yo, you there?
I'm here.
All right.
So we were just going to get into your $10,000 offer for the ultimate health technology.
All right. So, sorry, switching my headphones. Yeah. So there's like things like a glucometer. Like, everyone kind of knows what that is. If you have like diabetes, you prick your finger and it tells you what your blood glucose is. And now they have like ketone meters where you can prick your finger and it tells you like how many millimeters of ketones you have in your bloodstream. Things like that. And then once a year, if someone's being good, they'll go into their doctor and the doctor will say like, let's run a basic blood panel on you, where they'll check like your cholesterol and your sodium levels and like your liver enzymes. And then you get like that snapshot once a year of what's going on. And it's amazing that is as far as we go with things. Like if you're checking your blood once a year, maybe, like if you're being good, and like how many people actually end up, like when you're in your 20s or 30s, end up going to the doctor even once a year? Like most people usually only go when they're sick. If there was a device, and they even have like continuous glucose monitors that you put in like your hip or your arm in, or like your shoulder, and it monitors your glucose and like updates it on an app. What I want, that I've been talking about for years, that I would pay somebody $10,000 for if it worked well and was functional. Basically, the ability to take all of the biomarkers that are measured when somebody goes in for like a full panel, high end, like $600 blood test, like a company like WellnessFX or someone like that who does these like full scale blood tests. If they made a device that was small enough that it wasn't, it didn't make like regular life difficult. Like it didn't make it hard to shower, or it didn't make all these things difficult. You could still play sports, and it was implantable, and it gave you a continuous reading of all of the different biomarkers of health and disease going on in your body at that time. So it would measure your hormone levels. It would measure like testosterone and estrogen and things like that. It would measure your nutrient levels, like what your sodium was like, what your cholesterol was like, what your vitamin A levels, B, D, E, all these different things. Basically everything, like what your liver enzymes are doing, everything that you could get on the highest end blood test available, being able to measure that in real time. Mm-hmm. And I think if a device like that exists, and there would certainly be barriers and obstacles that would be needed to overcome, because there's like one issue is some metrics are better measured in like urine. Some metrics are better measured in saliva. So like take cortisol. Cortisol you can do a saliva test for, but now there's what's it called? It's called Dutch testing. And there's this new type of cortisol. And cortisol is a stress hormone that's produced by your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are kind of like two little like almonds that sit on top of your kidneys, and they basically produce your stress hormones, cortisol.
Right.
And so there's this new thing called Dutch testing, which is, it's like dried urine testing. I forget what the rest of the acronym is. I think that's what it is. But basically they found that when you do a normal cortisol tests would show just the, oh man, I'm going to screw this up. But it's something like normal tests would just show the like what cortisol was in your saliva at that time. But what could be happening is it's like you could be producing cortisol, but not converting it well
into something that your saliva would show.
Yeah, I'm screwing this up. We'll probably just cut this part out.
No, we probably won't. But I want to know.
But basically, they
what's
found
like
a way
the
to
minimum
the
viable
Dutch
product
testing
here?
the Dutch testing measures the cortisol metabolite. So say your adrenal glands are producing cortisol, but it's not getting metabolized. That's not going to show up on the salivatory test, but it'll show up in the urine test. Because if say you get a saliva test and it says that you have low cortisol, you might still be producing a high amount of cortisol, but it's only testing for the amount that's like coming out in your saliva. So you could take all these different like supplements to support your adrenal glands, trying to increase your cortisol output when that's not the real problem. But with the Dutch testing, and it measures like the actual metabolites, so like how much is actually being produced, then you can see whether or not like you're actually producing cortisol and it's not getting metabolized, or you're not producing enough. So I don't know if that made any sense. I haven't talked about it in a while, so it's still a little rusty for me. But yeah, basically, if you have this device that could measure, you got around the hurdles like what's the best way to test, and maybe some of those things you just can't test for in the blood because it needs to be tested in saliva or urine or something like that, or like feces if it's heavy metals or things like that. But I just think that would, if you had this device, say it only did 50% of all of those things that I just mentioned, and it was implantable, it would revolutionize healthcare in, I think, one of the most profound ways since like antibiotics or something like that. Like whatever is a dramatic thing to say right there. But like, think about it. It would destroy the debates between what diet is best, what exercise program is best, because someone says you need to be paleo, you need to be vegan, you need to be macrobiotic, you need to be pescatarian, and you say, okay, I will eat that way for 30 days, and then I'm going to review the data on this and see what actually works best for me, and then add alongside that your subjective measures to, like, how do I look and how do I feel and how am I performing. But then you see, oh, my like LDL cholesterol dropped 50 points, my triglycerides cut in half, like all of these different things, and like my testosterone shot up and my stress hormones went down. It's like, okay,
so
like,
so what
clearly,
you want is you want all of these markers. Are there like a few markers? Like, let's say we get a version 1 of this. What would be like the top 3 to 5 markers that you would want in the version 1?
I would say, so I'm going to say cholesterol is one of them, and not because I think cholesterol is super important,
HDLs
but I think that
or LDLs?
No, dude, you got to do it all. So you need HDL, LDL. If you could do LDL fractionization, where they basically take your LDL and divide it into the subsets of size, because you could have a high LDL, but there's different particle sizes of LDL. Like, it's not as simple as like HDL is good, LDL is bad. Like, there's good in, like, your body doesn't have just like little terrorists running around being like, hey, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Like, everything serves a purpose, but it's the small, dense LDL particles that are the ones that will be sticky and will stick and build up into plaques, versus the large, fluffy LDL. Those kind of just like float around like a beach ball at a concert, and they're not causing any problems. So if you could measure the fractionization of the LDLs, and there's different ways to measure that. So again, it's another barrier because some are more accurate than others. But if you could do HDL, LDL, LDL particle size, and then like just calculate total LDL, also triglycerides. I think if of anything, triglycerides is probably the most important part of that kind of cholesterol panel. And then giving you the right like ratios. Like, I think HDL to total cholesterol is an important biomarker to measure. So then just calculations based on that stuff. And the hormones would also be super fascinating, because hormones control everything. Like, when I was thinking about going to medical school for a while, I wanted to like have my focus be like, if I became a doctor, be endocrinology, because I think just the study of hormones is fascinating, and they control everything. Like, you have your hunger hormones like leptin and ghrelin. Like, ghrelin you can think of as like a little gremlin, which is in your stomach that kind of like growls when you're hungry. So ghrelin gets up.
Okay. So we're way over 5 biomarkers at this point, but it sounds like.
Oh, did you say 5?
I said
okay,
3
I'm
to
gonna
5.
say 3 to 5. Okay, I'm gonna say cholesterol as one of them, and that includes all of those subsets that I just mentioned.
Okay. Cholesterol,
and then hormones. Let's say sex hormones. I'll make it even more narrow, because there's
testosterone,
tons of hormones. And progesterone.
And what does progesterone do?
Something to do with your period. There's this weird like flip that occurs when somebody is like going through their period, where like the estrogen levels drop.
Why do you care about your period?
I don't. I'm saying if this was for the general population, so not for me. Sure, just but there. Yeah. I think there's a.
I'm trying to get version 1 down, just so you and I can have one of these to get in great shape.
If there's a way to, I know there is a way to measure. If this could measure whether you're estrogen dominant or not, because some people just convert their testosterone into estrogen at a higher level, and that can cause you to get like man boobs and things like that. If you're just, what is it? Oh, there's a term for it. Is it not androgenizing? That's going to drive me crazy. Can't remember that. But okay, sex hormones, cholesterol, and let's say cortisol I don't think cortisol is it's not a sex hormone.
No, it's a stress hormone.
So stress hormones. That's 3, and maybe fat soluble vitamins. So
I'm surprised like glucose and ketones aren't on your list.
Oh well, that's a given because that technology already exists.
Right. Okay.
But then even
you want an implant that you can play sports with. Like okay. So basically, we gotta get glucose, we gotta get ketones, we gotta get cholesterol. Then you want sex hormones, and you want stress hormones, and that would be
fat-soluble vitamins.
Fat-soluble vitamins, which are. Can you give me an example? Like vitamin D?
Vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin D, and vitamin K. Those are the fat-soluble vitamins.
Okay, so now we've got like 15 markers, but I think it gives us a good start.
And can I? Oh,
you're like a product designer's worst nightmare. Like, give me the top 3 priorities. Here's 30 priorities. Okay. Wait,
I just think that would be
else?
it would just revolutionize healthcare.
Okay, so revolutionize
healthcare.
We're gonna put that down because we're already running over. But I want to talk to you about what you're really. You're known for being a great-looking guy in great shape, Chris, but like what you do in your life for others doesn't really have that much to do with that. So can you talk to me? Tell me what you do, and tell me why you're so good at it. And let's go over some of the business side of things, because if we don't at least touch on business here, we won't be getting into the most valuable nitty-gritty.
Okay. What do you want to know? What can I answer for you?
Well, I was thinking that you're really, I know you from a marketing perspective. Okay, so when I met you, you were working on marketing and press relations. You work in startups, so we do a lot of things, but it all had to do with marketing and press and messaging and positioning and putting these things together to get attention on our product that we were building, which was a wearable device. So I was going to start with press and how to get press for your startup, but also develop the relationships that matter in that arena. Mm-hmm. But I honestly, right now, I'm more curious about what you're doing, like right now, like these days. So, really, what's going on in the day to day?
Yeah, right now I am working at a company called App Sumo, which is a startup in Austin, Texas. And what we do, I think kind of the tagline for it is Groupon for geeks, also tools for entrepreneurs. So we work with other companies, so typically software companies, who have a new tool that is kick-ass. So whether it's a design software, like there's a company called DesignBold that helps you basically design for non-designers. So someone like me who has not great design skills, but I don't want to hire a graphic designer to put something together, can use DesignBold. Another one we're about to come out with is called SERPstat, which basically allows you to do competitive analysis on people. So you can plug in someone's website and it gives you all the information on them, like what SEO keywords that they're targeting, all these different metrics on your competition. So you can either try to beat them or just try to be competitive or stay away from their market and try to find a different kind of blue ocean. So we work with these companies and then we strike up a crazy deal with them to sell their product, to kind of showcase their product. And for that showcase, we'll offer a reduced price for our audience, who we affectionately call our Sumolings, based on App Sumo. And we have a raving fan base of people who love these products, and and we'll run these promotions for typically about a week. And so say the product is normally $500 a year, we'll give it away for $39 for lifetime access, like typically 90% off or more the sticker price. And we'll launch those for about a week. And the reason our partners do it is because our Sumolings are incredible customers to have. Like they're not the type of people who are just going to buy something and then you're never going to hear from again. Like, they're the people who are like, hey, can I look at your code? Like, I want to know how this functions. Or, hey, do you have this ability? Hey, I thought of 15 things you could add to your product roadmap. Like, they're really good first customers to have, because they're going to go in and they're going to like see how things work, suggest ways to fix it, give detailed reviews. Like, we have people on our list who, like, when we're testing a deal just to make sure it works, we'll like flip it live for 15 or 20 minutes so we can just like run through and test everything. And there will be people who, like, in those 15 minutes will go in, buy the deal, check out the product, and then leave a 500-word review. And it's like, how did you even see this? Like, they must have like Google alerts set up for like when new products come out. Like, they're just hungry people who love this stuff. And so partners love working with us because of the people that they get exposed to.
So what kind of product do I bring to you, right? Like, if I'm about to launch a new product, what kind of product do I bring to you? What do you want to see? What do you want to hear about?
So we want something that, I mean, the overarching theme is things that are going to help a small business or someone who's starting up grow their business. So tools that are going to do that. So whether it's an advertising software, whether it's a design software, whether it's a video editing software, or a like animation making software, a social media, like a social media automation type thing, a PR. We did one called Just Reach Out that was kind of a database that helped you reach out to writers, like bloggers or journalists, things like that. So things that are in that space, and it's pretty all encompassing. But as long as it kind of falls under the title, like, this is going to help you take your business from like A to B, or like S to T, wherever you're at. So sometimes we'll do starter plans, and then we'll do for like the lower tier package, and then and then we'll also do kind of like, if you're an agency or you work with multiple businesses, then here's a bit of a higher end offer for you. So those are the type of tools, but we want to see something that is not like in beta, something that has ideally been validated by like a portion of people, and now you're looking to really get exposed on the grand audience. So it's like, I think we've done Evernote, we've done Shopify, we've done Dropbox, things like this. But like, we want to find those companies. Like, we had Dropbox before it was Dropbox. So we're looking for those companies that are going to be huge, and they need that little kickstart to get going. So we showcase them on AppSumo, and AppSumo becomes the launching ground for, $1 billion company.
So to put this into like product management or data analytics terms, you want products that have got good daily active user counts, good retention, and that are basically looking to go from, okay, we've got product market fit, now we just need to scale. And in order to get that, maybe you're getting ready to go into a funding round or something, and you wanna go from several thousand daily active users to tens of thousands of daily active users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, our sales team, we have Ullman and Eamon, and then we have a couple new guys who came on. Eamon's not really doing much sales; he's the president of AppSumo, but he was doing sales. He was running the whole business himself for a while from a laptop, which is just crazy because it's mega successful. So he's been doing a great job, just leadership, and then also doing sales for some of the big deals. And then Ullman as well. It's just incredible doing the sales. And so he will dive in with the company and really help them explore like what they want to achieve, what their goals are, what their product roadmap is looking like. He'll go through the onboarding sequence with them and give them advice on how to change it. And the partners are super receptive because, as Eamon says, like, we have the watchtower on the industry. Like, we see what's going on across the landscape of technology startups, like mostly from the software side. And so we know what people like, what people are going to be using, what's going to sell, what's not. I mean, Eamon's been doing this for over 2 years. Like, he, in launching that's one of the really cool things about AppSumo. Last year we launched over 100 products, on AppSumo. And so you think, like, if you're working in a tech startup, you've seen, like, you're working on your product all year long. we get to look at like the inner workings of hundreds of companies every single year. And so it gives us this like massive database to pull from of what people are responding to, what they like, what's going to work and sell and be a tool that's valuable. And the partners really appreciate that. And they see Ullman, who's the head of sales, more like an advisor than as like a salesman. Like he's very good at giving them advice that's going to help them grow their business, and they take it. Like he'll be on a call and they'll have their entire like marketing and product development team sitting in on the line because they want to hear what he has to say and hear what direction or advice he has for like how they have their site set up or what their pricing model is like. So it's pretty incredible. It's an incredible team to work with. They're super sharp people.
So what kind of work are you doing there these days? What's your role in the team?
I am working with the operations and the marketing. And so some of the big things that I'm focusing on now is building out the affiliate channel, as well as making sure all of the deals run smoothly. So we have the sales team that closes the deal. And then once that happens, then me and my team will go about setting up, we get the copy written for the actual like stories that go out. We set up the emails, we do all of the testing to make sure like the codes are working and doing all that. And then there's and then we have a ads team who does like the Facebook and the PPC. So working with them to make sure everything's aligned. And now we're going to be working on one of the big things this year is retention, like focusing on retention and growth. Those are
retention and growth of AppSumo links.
Yeah.
So of your people who are kind of checking these deals on a day-to-day basis, you really want to improve the rate at which they come back day over day.
Yeah, so we want to be more data focused. So figuring out what are the metrics we really want to be tracking and improving upon. So figuring those out and diving in. I mean, like I said, Eamon was running this company virtually by himself for like 2 years and doing an amazing job. And then over the past year, he's brought a couple people on to the point where now the team is, so there's about 4 of us in the office and 8 of us, I believe, in total, something like that. So now that we have this team looking at how do we take this and grow it tenfold. And so what are the things we really want to be working on and in doing that. So yeah, retention, it's like if you're going fishing, it's like before you go fishing, you want to make sure that like you're checking your net and there's no big holes in it that their fish are slipping through, because you could be, trawling all day or all summer. And if there's a big hole in your net, it doesn't matter how many fish get into it, they're all going to slip out. So taking a look at that. And then once we know that like we've nailed all of those steps in the higher end of the funnel and they're as tight as they can possibly be, then looking to get that in front of more people.
Okay. So we're going to wrap up here. Before I let you go, I want to know, where can listeners find you, and do you have any kind of ask for the audience, anything you want them to take with you?
Oh, man. I want them to build that product if they want me to ship them a quick 10K.
I think they'll need more than 10K to get that figured out.
No, I mean, they build it. They spend all the money, and then I will buy the first one for $10,000. I'm not funding this. I'm just giving them a little bonus.
But we've got some market validation on this brilliant health implant idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where can they find me? Guess they can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I have the the Facebook newsfeed eradicator, so I'm rarely on Facebook. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, and that's basically the only social media I use. They can find me through you. I'm sure I'll pop up somewhere. But do I have an ask of the audience? I would say, I think this is the advice I gave to that you and I were talking about recently. When somebody does something that upsets you, ask yourself, how many times have you behaved like that? And I think doing that allows the situation to get diffused a lot quicker than it would otherwise. And I would also say, look, when you get frustrated by, like, say, politics or religion or diet or whatever it is, like these things that people get really charged up about, just trying to realize that you're not always right and that the other side is not evil or stupid, and to write them off as such is just an easy way to stay ignorant and to, like, demonize the other side. So those are two things I would ask people try to keep in mind. But, like, who am I to ask anything? Do what you want. That's some of the advice I've been trying to follow. Read The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. That's a good book.
I love Jonathan Haidt. And we're going to have links to...
the Autobiography of Malcolm X.
And the Autobiography of Malcolm X.
And all the works of Robert Greene.
I was going to tell you, if you want some more motivation to read Herodotus, I think that he was the Robert Greene of his time, because it's basically like a bunch of stories about the histories of the Greeks, and but he pulls, like, these morals and these lessons out of the stories, so he's kind of like an ancient Robert Greene.
He's also very, from what I've heard, he's very dramatic. Like, the stories he tells, you shouldn't necessarily see as straight up history.
Which is just like Robert Greene.
Anyway.
Oh,
I was
man. I think I just touched on something.
No, what was I
do you
going
want
to say?
to? Okay, get the last word.
There is a version of Herodotus' Histories that I really want to get. I believe it's called the Landmark series, and they have that one. They have the history of the Peloponnesian War. They have the campaigns of Alexander, and there are these, like, big, almost like coffee table books. So instead of reading just, like, the text of Herodotus, it's going to be the text of Herodotus, but it's going to have maps and images and things like that, so you can really, like, dive in and get a full history of them. So I want to get all of those books and dive into them, because the history of the Peloponnesian War is something that I've also been wanting to read. I want to read more of those more ancient texts either this year or next year. This is the year of, like, big biographies for me. So
you've been on the year of big biographies for the last 2 or 3 years that I've known you.
Yeah,
but you're just doubling
I feel like
down.
There's just so much to learn. I mean, I have Plutarch's Makers of Rome right there that I want to dive into shortly, and there's too many books, man.
Chris Schelzi, we're gonna have another conversation, season 2.
Okay, I look forward to it.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and have a great rest of your day.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure chatting.
Hey everybody, a few things before you go. First of all, thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this conversation with Chris Schelzi. I know we didn't get too much into the business side of things, and that's because Chris and I really love to talk about coffee and fitness and health and that sort of thing. So we decided that type of conversation would be just as interesting as a conversation about marketing. But let me know. In any case, give me your feedback. Go to hackerpractice.com and leave your feedback in the form on the homepage. And if you enjoyed the episode, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening and leave us a review on iTunes so that we will climb the charts and more people will get to hear these wonderful little interviews. Again, if you enjoyed the episode, please hit the subscribe button. Please leave a review on iTunes, and please, whether or not you liked it, give us your feedback at hackerpractice.com. There's a contact form on the page. Thank you so much, and see you next time.